We want to check in with Deanna Barash. She's the Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum and Assessment and Instruction over at the West Bloomfield School District. It is always such a pleasure to have you with us on the Oakland County MegaCast. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good.
Weeks.
Have you had time to catch your breath after the start of the school year?
A little bit. We actually are starting to have some just regular school business happening rather than just pandemic planning all the time. So we're excited about that.
So we're a couple weeks in. I believe you guys started, some of you, at the end of August. How are things going? I'm sure there were a few glitches in the beginning.
Really, surprisingly, quite well. And so we really attribute that to the many, many hours and weeks of planning our teams did to make sure that we were ready to start the school year, and that transportation and food service and our custodial staff, our teachers and our principals, to make sure that we were ready to safely open school. And so really, it's gone surprisingly well with very few glitches at all. So we feel very fortunate.
You and everyone over there at the school district, you have been working around the clock to make all of this happen. Going forward, where do you see things happening? Is it going so smoothly that maybe more people will be allowed back into the classrooms, do you think?
Well, I think at some point in time, we're obviously have committed to following the governor's phases. And so until we move to phase 5 in this region, we anticipate really staying exactly the way we are. We are beginning something that's kind of exciting, I think, for us as well. As you know, we did not bring West Bloomfield High School back. They are fully remote at this point in time, along with our Lakers Online families, kindergarten through high school, who chose to continue to learn online and not send their kids back to in-person school. And so at West Bloomfield High School, we're launching a task force, a return to learn task force, that will consist of our administrative team, teachers, students, and parent representatives, to begin to look at how we might slowly begin to bring high school students back into the building, and to really think about how we do high school. And so I think that we will all struggle to bring kids back in at 7 a.m. for classes when they've had really 6 or 7 months of having flexibility and those kinds of things. And so we're excited to begin to start that plan, not really knowing exactly when we're ready to have students in person, but at least beginning to think about returning to some sense of normalcy at West Bloomfield High School as well.
We saw, I think the pictures were out of Lance Cruz, where they did bring some of the students back, but you do have those pinch points in the hallways as they're switching classes. When you see situations like that at other schools, does it ring an alarm bell for you, or has that already been a part of your plan?
Well, that's the reason why we chose not to bring our high school students back, for that very reason. When you're trying to manage 1,800 students and safely move them in the halls and not limit the number of courses that they take or the options that they have, it really is quite impossible to bring everybody back. And so we need to think about, how do we offer that flexibility in course schedule and when the school day starts. Can some classes always remain remote learning only? Do you have to have everybody back in the building every day, whether we're in pandemic or not? I think is part of that greater conversation. And so, yes, when you see photos like that, or you see some of our neighboring districts who have had high school students back in session, who've had to close because they've had positive cases, really what we've tried to minimize is that disruption of education. And that's the reason we chose to keep the high school remote learning only, at least for the start of the school year.
So Deanna Barash with us. She is the Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum Assessment and Instruction at the West Bloomfield School District, with us today on the Oakland County MegaCast. The school district also our Facebook partner. Deanna, the school district already has K through 8 back in an in-person and virtual hybrid in a cohorted fashion. Is that viable at the high school level, or is that something that you believe, or the school district believes, wouldn't work, and that's maybe one reason of the many why high school had not been initially brought back in a hybrid fashion, and maybe needs a little more discussion before that's something that's on the table?
That's exactly the reason, Tyler, actually, is because When we have a comprehensive high school with the number of courses that we offer, one of the things we pride ourselves on is the opportunities for kids to take many different types of courses that meet their needs and their interests. You can't cohort students when they have that number of those choices. So you have seniors with freshmen, depending upon the course. You have courses that are smaller, like AP courses, or you have kind of standard courses for ninth graders. We're just across the board. And when we just talked about how can we safely move students or not move students, that they come and the teachers move to them, then you really have to limit the number of options kids have in the classroom. And we're just not comfortable with doing that. That's one of our kind of prized things at West Bloomfield High School is we are responsive to the courses that kids want and to their needs and to the things that they want to study. And we would not be able to do that and bring them back in and to cohort them like we have at the middle school or certainly at the elementary level. And so we have to balance what makes the most sense. Do we limit what kids can have and have access to in the classroom, or do we try to figure out the best way to slowly start to bring students back in and really work on those safety protocols? And are there grade levels that are need to be in person more than others? Are there courses where you really need to be there, like lab courses or sometimes those upper level math courses for that in-person instruction, and others that just lend itself very well to remote learning? Those are the things that the task force is going to study and begin to put some plans in place, because we know that it's important for a number of reasons. Certainly for the instructional piece, for kids to be in session, but also that social emotional piece. We are certainly animals and creatures who like to be around each other. We know that kids need that, and they need that social interaction as much as anything. And so, and I think they've become comfortable wearing masks and understanding social distancing and all those sorts of things. But we need to make sure that we can do that safely. So we aren't doing this disruptive open for a few days. We have a positive case. We have to contact trace, so we need to close for a little while. That's really very difficult in the educational process as well. So the task force will begin to meet and start to put those plans in place.
Not only difficult, but also so much time put into that when someone is positive, and how you're going to manage it and move forward and then try to trace everyone that came into contact with that individual. Deanna, for the students that are back in the classroom in some capacity, how is that going so far?
It has gone really, really well. I mean, really well. I think primarily because our parents have done an excellent job helping kids feel comfortable wearing masks. And our teams, as we talked about prior, I feel like I've been on quite a few times, but our classroom to cloud planning teams, really those building level teams that spent hours and hours thinking about how do we keep kids safely in classrooms? What are the cleaning protocols we need to follow? How are we going to have them move through the classroom? And obviously the elimination of things, those high risk areas and opportunities. So recess, lunch, snack time, movement in the halls where you might be going to your locker. We've really eliminated those. And so that has been able for us to really keep kids in those cohorts and really isolated and not having to have a lot of interaction when we would have more opportunities for exposure. So it's gone extremely well. I have to give a lot of kudos to all of our teams too. And, we have a midday transportation run so they're picking up at the middle school, they're going to the elementaries, they're taking kids home, they're bringing a different group of kids back. It has just run extremely smoothly. We've been able to provide meals for our families. Anybody who wants food, anybody can get meals. That's gone very, very well. Our cleaning has gone exceptionally well. So in between each cohort, every classroom, every restroom, hallways are all cleaned. And so that we know that we're not having students who might be potentially exposed from the morning to the afternoon. And we're just being very vigilant about making sure kids wear masks, that we're following those protocols, and that really we're keeping kids as safe as possible. So it's gone really, really well.
Deanna Barash with us. She's the Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum Assessment and Instruction at the West Bloomfield School District, joining us today on the Oakland County MegaCast. So with everything that has been changed for this school year with COVID-19 in mind, have there been any discussions about how some of these changes that have been made and implemented for COVID-19 may be somewhat in the plans or in the curriculum and instruction formula in the school district going forward after the pandemic?
Well, I really believe that Lakers Online, so our fully remote learning only option that our families kindergarten through 12th grade could choose, we are at just under 1,500 students in the district who chose to remain remote at the start of the school year, so at least for first semester. I don't see that going anywhere. I think that we'll probably see numbers that will dwindle some. There will be families who will elect to come back to in person when they feel comfortable. But I think what we've learned is that in education, this is an opportunity for us to really think differently about how we deliver instruction. And we know that school and the typical bricks and mortar, the way it's been for hundreds of years, is not always how every student learns and not necessarily best for every family. And so I feel that one of the things that will remain, regardless of whether we're in pandemic or not, is a remote learning only option for our families. It's not been without its bumps, of course. Anytime you're dealing with technology, we had a new learning management system, so a new way for students to access certainly their curriculum. We obviously had some issues with Zoom at the beginning of the year, much like many of districts from across the country that we've been able to remedy. But I think it's smoothing out. I think families are feeling supported, and I think they feel like the education they're getting while their kids might be at home is mirrors exactly what they would get in person. And so I do feel that that's going to continue regardless of whether we're in phase 4 or phase 5 or 5 years from now. I think we've been responsive and shown that kids, we need to be able to provide an opportunity for kids to learn differently no matter what their needs are. So I think that'll be one thing that'll continue. I do feel that one of the things with our cohorts is that it's very intense. And so the students are really just getting core curriculum during the time that they're in person. And I think that's gone really, really well. You know, we worry a lot about learning gaps. When we left school in March, certainly we did an excellent job, but it is different than having regular school. And I think there was a lot of just transition and uncertainty for many of us, our teachers, our staff, our parents, our kids, as we faced the pandemic in March. And now we want to make sure that we're beginning to provide that really high quality instruction and get kids back on track. And we have to make sure we take care of their social emotional needs as well. It has been very traumatic for many of our students and our families. It is hard to get back into that routine. It is funny to see all the kids in masks and quite interesting to walk into classrooms and it's pretty quiet because they're not moving and they have their masks on. But I feel that we've really tried to make sure that instructionally that we are responsive to the needs of our kids and that we're continuing to move them forward as much as we can.
Deanna, I know one of the big conversation pieces around this was, at least in March, the teachers had a relationship already with the students. They knew them, they knew their weaknesses and their strengths, and that helped them navigate when they needed to go online. But coming into a new school year, they don't have those relationships with those students. Is there anything being done to try to address that, to build those bridges?
Yeah, it's particularly for our West Bloomfield High School students and then our Lakers Online students. We really gave teachers across the board, across the district, permission and actually encouraged that really the first few weeks of school, we did nothing but build relationships. The academic piece will always be there, and we'll be able to provide that high quality academic instruction at any point in time. But we really needed to make sure that students felt safe, whether that was in person or whether that was via Zoom when they were getting to know their teachers, that they felt comfortable with their classmates so that they would share and they would participate, and that they felt comfortable, obviously, interacting with their teacher so that if they had concerns or they needed something, that they felt that they could go to that person. And so we've said to our staff across the district, please take the first 2 to 3 weeks and do nothing but build relationships. We provided some sample activities. We said, your very first Zoom meetings really should just be getting to know you opportunities, icebreakers, things that you might put in. What do you want the kids to know about you as the teacher? What do you want them to share with you about them as learners and personally? And so I think that's gone very well. But we were very intentional about not just jumping right into that academic piece to start the year, but really stepping back and saying they have to know you as a teacher and you have to know them as students in order for this to be successful.
Deanna Barash with us on the Oakland County MegaCast. She is the Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum, Assessment, and Instruction at West Bloomfield School District. You have a tough job right now during this pandemic, I am telling you. So I know one of the big issues, as well as the building the bridges and getting to know your students, technology. Have you been able to bridge that gap going
We're very
into
fortunate.
the fall?
Sure. So we're very fortunate in West Bloomfield that our community supported a bond in 2017 that allowed us to purchase technology in three different opportunities over the course of the bond, because we know that technology almost has become disposable in many ways, a consumable. It only lasts for a certain period of time. So this summer, our board approves purchasing Chromebooks for every single student in the district, brand new ones. Our existing Chromebooks are still working and still there. We keep those in the schools so that students don't have to bring them back and forth if they're coming into in-person instruction. We held, kudos to our technology department, we had about 2 weeks where they did nothing but distribute Chromebooks to our families prior to the start of the school year. And we were also able to provide Wi-Fi hotspots for any family who demonstrated need or said they had a need. Had unstable internet connection, or just we're going to have multiple kids at home trying to access that Wi-Fi at the same time. So we were able to provide Wi-Fi for those families as well. So right now, every student in West Bloomfield has a brand new Chromebook and has access to Wi-Fi if need be. And that's really a credit to our community who supported our bond and recognized that technology is very, very important, whether we're in person or not, whether we're in pandemic or not. Technology is just part of our lives. So we've done an excellent job making sure our students have what they need.
I would imagine it's much easier as well if all of the students do have the same type of computer, because I know sometimes going from a Mac to a PC, some programs work here, some programs work there. It doesn't always line up, and it can be frustrating. But when we come to connectivity, I know that you provided the hotspots, but even here in the building, sometimes it's hard to get on or it's slow. So are there still those glitches? And we even heard about one student, not necessarily in West Bloomfield, he was so creative. He kind of did a backdrop and said loading. So the teacher just thought he had, issues with trying to get online.
Well, I can't tell you that we haven't had some of that, right? Like, I can't get on. I just can't get into this Zoom. And kids are kids, I think, in some ways as well.
They're much smarter than we were at their age, too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Yes. Or maybe we did it differently than what they do. But yeah, they definitely know how to outsmart us sometimes. So I would say in the building, we've had excellent connectivity. So because that's, again, something that's been supported by our community and our bond, is to make sure that we have the opportunity to have those drops in every single area of the building so that kids can do NWEA testing or M-STEP testing, or today we actually have, not online, but we have PSAT and SAT taking place at West Bloomfield High School. So we have students in the building today. And so I think in person has been just fine. At home, it is a struggle. And we have had some things with really our Zoom as our platform, being able to have students log in, making sure that they know now they have to authenticate, so they have to use their West Bloomfield email address. They have to have their password in order to get in. And so we always have to pivot. I think it's one of the things we've learned is we have a really good plan and we know where we want to be, but sometimes you just have to adapt. And so obviously making sure that there are high traffic times, of course, like right now within internet is a very high traffic time. There are going to be times where students might not be able to get into that Zoom lesson. Or maybe can't access our learning management system because of internet issues. That's why we have to make it available for kids whenever. So really we talk a lot about live and then on demand. So when teachers have lessons, they're recorded. Their students are able to go back and access those if need be. So we don't want this to become an access issue. So if our kids can't log in, that doesn't mean that they missed the lesson for the day and they're out of luck. Just means they're going to have to watch it on their own time. So we've tried to really plan for all of those scenarios so that kids aren't missing instruction.
2020 is all about flexibility. So, Deanna, it's always great having you with us. We always learn so much when you're on the show. Anything we didn't touch on that you want to get out to our listeners and viewers this morning?
No, other than I would just say, thanking our community and our parents for their flexibility. Again, it is 2020. That has to be our theme right now, is that the only thing we know is that it's the unknown. We're not sure what's going to happen. And so always being supportive and, really our parents have been so willing to kind of go on this journey with us and to partner with us and understand that it's just everybody working together to do the best we can. So we're fortunate to be in West Bloomfield. We're fortunate to have the parents we have and our staff, and it's been a great start to the school year.
Great to have you on with us, Deanna. So many parents, the teachers, the students, they're all having to adapt. During this time, West Bloomfield has really done a great job of trying to address these issues and being transparent and keep the parents and the students informed on these decision-making decisions, but also having them included as well. So great to have you with us.